It's just an honor to conduct this interview with Lynda. I want to hand over this mic as fast as I can because she has so much to say and so much good things to tell us. So my introduction is going to be super short, but I just remember meeting you maybe 4 or 5 years ago at the YUSA. I was visiting there. She comes down the hall, and I think Chad, you introduced me to her, and I just have to say it was so obvious the warmth that you have and the genuine conversation you briefly had in that moment, and your smile is absolutely contagious. I'm so excited to have you here to tell your story because we need to hear from each other, really how God moves in our lives, what the why has meant to us, how does this all work together, and your work in diversity and inclusion and the global context is just so important and critical. And you have such a great perspective because it is global and it is from all these dimensions of diversity within yourself, but also as you work with such diverse people in our movement. So I'm really excited to hear about your work, your perspectives, and how your faith as a Christian intersects with that work. And just even on a deeper level to understand a little bit more about you and your day-to-day faith and spirituality. And I know you've got in the background something you're going to tell us about. It's kind of an altar-like spiritual space for you inside of your workspace and your home. So I'm just going to kick it off quickly here with the first question, which is just to share with us your why story, including, how it has shaped you as well. So go ahead, Lynda.
Well, great. I definitely shut off the spotlight feature and have it back on gallery. As many of you know, I'm a collectivist, so this is just an honor to be here, but I do feel like part of the collective. And as we start talking about my YMCA journey, it really is about the people that I've encountered along the way now for many years, and several of them are actually on the Zoom call today. So definitely it's been a journey in these 33 years. As many of you know, I started my Y career back in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the Heights Branch Family YMCA in downtown Albuquerque, a place that really changed who I was. I was very young. I was the first one in my family to go to college and was needed to augment my waitressing job. And my best friend and mentor, Antoinette Tejas, told me, I've got a space here for Christmas camp. Do you want to come in? And I basically then never left. I was in my late teens, early 20s at that point. And I was quite serious about that job. I ended up very deeply involved in youth development, and it did change my life. I really do believe that it changed my life. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining me today. You are in my altar space. This is actually part of my front room. It's quite a centerpiece, and my team members that have been here know it, but I'll just lift it up. It goes up quite high, as you can see. And some of these pieces are very, very old. So this one in particular, just speaking of New Mexico and how passionate I am about New Mexico, this was actually my grandmother's, and she gave birth in a home that never had running water. She gave birth to 15 children with a Native American midwife. You'll see a lot of the intersections in our faith tradition in New Mexico because we're a colonized state. So much of us are about Spanish colonization and being indigenous people from the Americas. So much of what you see in my altar has that very New Mexico feel. And I think when you come into my home, it has that New Mexico feel. Some of the first words that people will say about New Mexico and how they describe it, many people will say spiritual. And it really does intersect in just about everything that we do. The centerpiece of my altar is my brother Ronnie. You all. Who was shot and killed in a race-related incident, as some of you know, when I was 8. And so I feel that the YMCA, I wanted to be a lawyer. I was so passionate about becoming a lawyer because my family ended up with a public defender, and the guy that killed him was a white adult male, wealthy, and he ended up getting found guilty of second-degree murder, but was given 2 years probation. So I was like, I've got to improve the justice system here. I need to become a lawyer. I want to be a public defender because I don't want anybody to have to go through what my family went through when that happened. But then when I went into the YMCA, I was just transformed. And it was because of the youth development, the positive youth development. And I think many of us who experienced something significant, especially as a child, and being brought up in a faith tradition that's so deep in New Mexico, Jesus Christ became my hero and my best friend as an 8-year-old. I would carry around a picture of Christ next to my brother because I knew that's where my brother was. As I continue the journey of the YMCA, the most significant work that that was a really big part of my career is leaving the Albuquerque YMCA and going into the work with the Mexico YMCAs and the Casas Migrantes. I see Renata right here on the top of my screen, and so many other people that were part of it. She's still ensuring that work is happening, and Mary, the world service work that goes to that. But talk about being in Christ's presence when you start seeing where the lowest pain point for a child can be. Those that are most excluded and most isolated. And the thing about the migrant homes are these kids are without their parents and without their family members, and how the way that the YMCA wrapped their arms around those young people in love, caring, faith and spirituality is still something very significant. And so my journey is with the Y, Janelle, is so much of my Y journey is much about something else that we talked about, which was my spiritual practices. And so I work over there now. And so when I'm able to turn around, I see this, and if any of my team members or anybody that comes my way has an issue, that I'm able to, before I broke my ankle, now I hobble over here, but I used to be able to run over here and light a candle. I have something really special for one of our team members who is pregnant right now. She's been on there for some time, and it's just part of the daily practice to know.
That's amazing. I thank you for being so vulnerable in your expression of where all your passion comes from and the need for justice in this world, and understanding the power dynamics that aren't equitable. I appreciate your vulnerability. You started touching on the global work, and you referenced Mary on the call, and Renata, some of your team members are here. And I don't know if you want to tell us anything more about what you see going on in the world through the YMCA, but we'd love to hear that perspective, because most of us have our own little Y, and this is what we know. And if you can talk a little bit about that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So as we know, and I think in the Christian faith tradition and in the indigenous tradition, we're all connected. Everybody is connected. And so for us, it's very natural to see our global connections, especially somebody like me that comes from the border and recognizes just how interwoven we are globally. But the global work is really what has transformed my life. And as I think about Christianity in our world today, I can't help but see it. And then now, very emotionally, I'm seeing people like Francisco and Oscar Ordenes from Chile. I mean, talk about early transformation and witness of Christ's work. So many of our international partners do this work with such minimal resources in some of the most difficult situations of our lifetime. And it's through their faith and their belief and solidarity but some of the places where I've really felt Christ's presence, it's places like rural Nicaragua, where poverty is so extreme and access is so extreme. To see them in sustainability efforts, it's just, and their faith tradition, it's just amazing. When I think about what we've all been talking about related to the border homes and the YMCA of Haiti and the young people there, one of the primary responsibilities I had when I came to YMCA of the USA back in 1999 was because of the gang intervention work that I had done. Because we were working at the border, as I was working at the border, I was also exposed to what were these like transnational gangs at the time. And it's really interesting. I learned this from my mom, and she's like the matron of this altar. But she always said to pray for the people that were most despised, the people that nobody else was going to pray for, and to learn to do that. And I, and coming from Albuquerque and a tough area, gang intervention, and I saw so much about these young kids. Like there's no throwaway kids, right? All of these gang members, it was one choice or another, and so much of them were because of what was happening in their country and not having any other place. So I am going to show you another part of this altar, which I carry around a lot. And this is so global. This goes back now to my early days in youth development and coming at the gang program. We worked with our Native American tribes that are around the area with the kids. And so these are called talking sticks. And you can imagine how important it was to have faith be part of bringing together gang members that despised each other and all the safety issues back then. And so this is all spiritual pieces that the kids would come and hang their pieces on. This is actually beaded. But Mary, you're going to really love this story. This particular stick, not that you'll like this too. This came out of the work we were doing in Thailand when we did the youth leadership work in Thailand, working with young people that had been forced into sex tourism. And the kids from New Mexico were able to touch the hearts of the kids from Thailand. And that's where we started so many of our intercultural conversations with young people that oftentimes feel that an enemy is an enemy because they just don't know who that person is. So yeah, Janele, the global work, thank you all for supporting World Service. And I do think that this has been just an amazing way for us to see the diversity of faith around our globe is through our global world movement. And I'm very, very grateful for it every day.
Thank you.
Cisco was like the little tyke.
Yeah.
He was like 16.
He was 16. You told me you were at the YUSA doing this for like 22 years or something, I think you said to me. So yes. Yeah, a lot of people can grow up in that time, Lynda. This is how it works, right?
Right.
I have another question about what you see regarding the future of faith and our Christianity and the why. And this is a tough question. It has a lot of history. The why has had this Christian identity, and sometimes we don't all agree with what that really is or what it should be or where should it fit and not and all that. And we have, this commitment to faith diversity and that people are all welcome here. Can you just tell me a little bit about what you see regarding the faith dimension of diversity and the Christian identity of the why?
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, on a journey as a young person, sometimes you learn most about the YMCA, again, from encountering other people and learning what this organization means to so many. And I had the honor and privilege during the 5 years that I was at the gang intervention program. That was actually with another organization. It's the only time that I left the Y. I was recruited to my local board in Albuquerque, the national board of YMCA the USA, and the executive committee of the World Alliance. And why I bring it up and what was so important is that we spent significant time, deep dive time, exploring the history of the YMCA, the Christian foundations of the YMCA, the Christian principles of the YMCA, and then how all of these different countries come into play within that space. And I'm in my early 20s at this point, like a sponge. And for me, I just loved the diversity of perspective, but I learned a lot about it. I really did learn a lot about it. And the thing that moved me the most in that work were faith leaders and YMCA leaders that were able to come to the conversation most Christ-like by listening to others, being empathetic of others, not judging others, and really being in this space of solidarity and being together in solidarity. And these conversations that we've had at the YMCA related to faith, belief, religion, etc. One of the ones that we've had to deal with the most in my time has been the separation between Catholics and Protestants in the YMCA. I mean, so our issues around our faith and belief aren't just with other religions and other faith traditions. I mean, it's within sections of overall Christians. Some of the conversations, some of the fieriest conversations that I've been in between how the YMCA shows up in Catholic tradition and how it shows up in Protestant tradition and how those things interplay. So these are all things that people are debating all the time. The acceptance of different dimensions of diversity within the faith tradition. We've all moved to the space where we can all be together with all dimensions of diversity because it's most Christ-like. So I've never, for me, coming into this work, it's always been a yes and. It's never been an either or. And we actually, the team and I in our conversation, we actually moved away from, and Chad really probably remembers this, and Mike and others that are on the phone, when we revamped the dimensions of diversity will and started making it our own rather than what was available in academia or in the fortune or in the for-profit world, is we made faith and belief a primary dimension of diversity. And so it's one that we want everybody to elevate and lift up. We want it to be in an inclusive way, obviously. That's part of our role, our organizational role. But spaces like this, we think are absolutely crucial. And so I would say any of the things that we have to be prepared for is not make this an either or, but a yes and. And how do we move forward in an inclusive way? How do we move forward by refraining from judging people and more observing people, being with them? And this concept of faith and lived experience. I mean, if we start reflecting back on Jesus Christ, so much of what was written that we know about him is lived experience. It was critical for him, and welcoming people of other lived experiences. And as I start, again, Jesus is my hero, and for me, in my case, I'm a Christian, but as I look at his actions when he was living, what we know of when he was living on this earth, who was he with? The most marginalized, the most excluded. When he got angry, oftentimes it was at systems. When I think of Jesus, he was looking at systems thinking way before it was ahead of anything, right? And that move into what is our humanity and love for humanity. And then I often just say, thank God that we're not the ones that have to judge. That belongs to God. We're not here to judge. We sure can learn to be with each other in a safe space, in a shared space. And I definitely think that it could be our Christian traditions and faith and other faith and belief traditions that are most focused about keeping all of our kids safe with equal and equitable opportunities to grow and thrive by keeping them safe. And how do we not make this work political? If there's one thing that we all need to pray for, is keeping all of this work within inclusion and love of humanity and love of Christ, and not making this political. This is not about ideologies or any of that. It's about how do we honor each other coming in. And so sometimes like I said, some of our worst arguments have been Christian between Christian. And so it's how do we not other the other, and how do we just make that person somebody else that is with us in what is this global village. I will say, Janelle, is that as everybody knows, I am one of the more emotional people that anybody will ever meet. I've studied it a long time. A lot of it is my early history, but I get very emotional when I look at the global map of the YMCA, because I really do see it as a pathway to peace. When all people can collectively come under a cause, one of the greater good in service of others, and bring in the forefront these spiritual traditions, including how we look at Jesus as an equity leader, as a leader of inclusion. Just think about how powerful that could be. It's a pathway to world peace.
Yeah. Lynda, I just want to re-listen to this, because what I remember you saying in the last few minutes is incredibly powerful, in the sense of what role does the YMCA play in the 21st century, right? In the conditions that we're in, and the division and the divisiveness, not just in our country, but all over the world. And what a beautiful picture to think, yeah, could we be that force of love, that unifying place of solidarity, plugged into a spirituality that actually has some power, right? It's not void of that. Wow, that's really incredible. I don't know where you see all that happening, or if you could write a script and say, YMCA worldwide, this is how you should do it. Like, you probably have some pretty passionate ideas, and I know that many things are in motion, but is there like one or two things that you just really wish, the YMCA would grab onto? And this was not part of the scripted question, so I'm just shooting.
One of the easiest things would be starting with these kind of collectives, and us just saying to ourselves here is, I am going to meet and learn and create a relationship with somebody who's very different from me, with somebody with a very different ideology and a very different perspective, whatever that may be. I seek it out all the time. Is how do we start? And Mike and I have talked about this, like social contact theory. I think that that's what's been so powerful to me at the YMCA, and some of us that have experienced in times of the greatest divide, people being able to come together, people whose countries have experienced deep hatred and war. When I was on the national board of YMCA of the USA, the majority of people were retirees on the national board, and there were many of them, like 50 of them. And many of them had come out of World War II. And it was their stories, or experienced it, their stories of the YMCA and the role that the YMCA was playing during wartime. I mean, if we could do that, if we could even just channel what our those that came before us in this organization, I mean, could you imagine that, like during World War II? I mean, sometimes it feels like in this time period, it has been like World War II. I mean, literally, not figuratively, as far as just the new, being in combat with the pandemic, right? Oh, yeah. It's been really tough times, and just look at how we've elevated this. And so I'd say leaning into each other's lived experience and sharing it, rather than finding things to be polarized about and sticking there. And getting curious again. I just think it's great for all of us to get curious again. Neil Nickel, when I got this job, he was just like, remember, don't worry too much about the people that have found the truth. You the people that you're going to move with are those that are still seeking the truth. Because we do have in the in the diversity, inclusion, global multicultural development space, sometimes we do need to navigate absolutism, and how do we rather open ourselves up to being present with somebody, and para que todos sean uno. It's our 1721. It's the how we're all one, and then utilizing some of the scripture related to if we see ourselves as one body, we've all got different functions and such, but we're still one global humanity under God.
Yeah. Thank you, Oscar, for reminding us of John 21.
Yeah, Oscar.
That's good. Yeah, unity. Yeah,
Yeah.
solidarity, unity. There's lots of words to say that. It doesn't always mean uniformity, right? That's what you're saying is unity.
Absolutely, and we've all seen that, and we've all talked about it. And again, this concept of being in Christ's presence. Sometimes we find those spaces from people that we would never have encountered had it not been for this YMCA, because of our intentionality of bringing people together. But I really hope we lean into inclusion while still lifting up the need for us to contribute to making this world a better place for our young people. I mean, we should keep all children safe with opportunities and be risky sometimes, like Christ.
Yeah, being willing to
protect others, to stand up for other people.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lynda, for bringing us from our own little world to the bigger world. And I just want to end our interview with a question more of bringing it back down to your personal life. And you see all this going on in the world and in our country, and you've been at this grind, and there's, always changes at the YUSA. Like, it's not an easy job, and you have a very big heart. And sometimes when we have a lot of heart, sometimes we burn out. And I'm just wanting to know if you can share with us a little bit about how you use that altar or other things in your life to really lead from a place of strength and a place of vulnerability at the same time.
Yeah.
You have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I, again, going back to when I was an 8-year-old girl, and like looking at scripture and thinking about Jesus's crucifixion, and just knowing that that his human, like that really touched me. And you can imagine the relationship I'm making with my brother, right? But experiencing people's pain in a collective way, and what I've seen which I've been so humbled and grateful for, of seeing the work that that our YMCA folks are providing to those that are struggling the most. I mean, Mike just popped up on my screen, and I think about when we were doing work in South Africa at the height of the HIV pandemic, and we were in communities where 1 in 3 people were HIV positive, and there were no antiretrovirals, and sitting with people who not only were waiting in significant pain to pass, they were also stigmatized. And people said horrible things, and sometimes Christians said horrible things about how that came about. So being in that space with the HIV and youth and violence and et cetera, and then coming to the altar, is I just feel like it's like toughen up. This is people are I own my privilege every day. Every day. Every single day. And if, again, keeping our eyes, and the collective team, we always do this, our team's always there. That contact theory of how do we always stay closest to where the greatest pain is, where the greatest exclusion is, where the most inaccessible spaces that our communities are facing. Focus on that. It makes any office politics look like tiddlywinks. I don't even know a word to say. It's like,
Right.
we got to keep on. We got to keep on. And every time we hear of, and it happens for those, so many of us are so close in communities. Is having that empathy and that heart and that, moving the love of Christ into where the most suffering is really a way to keep going. And then of course, I'm always grateful to our families. I mean, I'm so grateful to how blessed I am with my husband and my daughters and the family that I have, and so many of our colleagues. But those are the things I think that really keep us all collectively connected. And then Janele, these kind of spaces, whatever they might be, and how we choose to create them, should be about fulfilling each other, or that concept of nourishment and energizing, and being grateful for the small things.
You've given us a lot to chew on in our breakout, a lot of things to respond to. And I hope people have found a phrase or two or a story or something that you wonder about from Lynda's conversation here